Anthony. Check. Helps if you turn my microphone on there, pal. Yep. But I was gonna say, I think the hardest I've ever laughed on the show might have been that. If not, it's when you realize that you lost Competition Wednesday last week and how you had lost it as you sit there in your costume. Why are you wearing the costume? Why are you wearing the Groucho Marx glasses and the top hat, the fedora?
Very impulsive move by me. I don't really have any rhyme or reason for it, just because.
The nose to mine that fell apart is sitting on my desk, and the hair underneath the nose, like the mustache. I guess that's what that's supposed to be. Yeah, it looks like a mustache straight on. It's just awkwardly attached to the nose. When you have the piece sitting there in your hand, mine's falling apart. I just need to throw the nose out because it's not attached to the glasses.
Dang. Did you have any sticky glue?
I guess I could glue it.
Yeah,
I'll figure that out. Although if you or I hit the costume show this week on the wheel, then we have to wear the rooster sweater. Do we just want to put that as the punishment no matter what this week? We're not even going to spin the wheel?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I think
think it's fitting.
I think you just have to wear the rooster sweater. Chris Russell, a.k.a. the Rooster, has donated his Rooster Ugly Christmas sweater for us for Competition Wednesday, and so we'll have to see who wears that tomorrow on the show. As for today on the show, let me pull out my phone real quick because I just saw an email from the old Commanders, and I know they made at least one roster move. Let's see if there's any corresponding. Yep, there it goes. So, all right, the Commanders have signed Tyree Jackson, 6'7", former University of Buffalo quarterback who is a converted tight end, to their practice squad, and Kaz Allen, the running back, wide receiver, you remember him, undrafted free agent that they signed last year and almost made the team this year. They really wanted him to make the team, except for he couldn't hold on to the football or make any plays. He is on injured reserve now, so he was on their practice squad. He's not cut or anything. They'll probably bring him back next offseason and see if they can figure that out in year 3 for Kaz. But he's ultimately going to go on IR for the rest of the season to make room for Tyree Jackson, who they need to bring in as a pass-catching tight end type because Zach Ertz is in the concussion protocol. The other big news today is that the Commanders, and we're going to take your vibe on all of this on a Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show in just a few minutes, because that's what it is. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday, and we're going to take your calls and blah, blah, blah. But we're going to react to this right now. The Commanders' Sunday night game against the Atlanta Falcons has been flexed. It's been flexed not to Saturday like we thought it was going to, Anthony. It is flexed into Sunday Night Football. They took the game that was there out. They got 3 other games that they're going to hit on Saturday, and ultimately the Commanders and Falcons will play with I would say, really good, playoff certainty will probably be on the line for both of them. There's a chance that it's just one of them. The Falcons may have to win to stay alive. The Commanders, there's no chance that they'll be playing to stay alive at that point because they have the lead right now. But they could be potentially playing to clinch depending on what happens in other games. And there's a chance that they clinch by knocking the Falcons out if the Falcons win this week and the Commanders lose this week. So I think that's how that goes. The Falcons could be eliminated this week if they lose because they would be 2 back with 2 to play and need tiebreakers that aren't available to them. So a lot of moving parts still at this point. There is a way that the Commanders can clinch this weekend. And of course, they have to either win or tie versus Philadelphia. But they're in really good shape. And that is kind of the status quo of things. How do you feel about this Commanders-Falcons game being flexed to Sunday Night Football? Because I know how I feel about it.
I mean, it's exciting. The storylines, you got Kirk coming back to FedEx. You have Jaden and the Commanders.
Northwest Stadium.
What'd you say? Oh, yeah, my bad. Yeah, I think it's a juicy matchup in general. Raheem Morris, he also spent time here in Washington. So
DQ versus Atlanta? that's Quinn's first matchup against the team that he used to be the head coach for.
Oh yeah, that too.
So you got all kinds of juiciness. Personally, I'm annoyed because Anthony, notoriously,
I already know.
I don't stay up late. I don't stay up late. And so because of that, and knowing the fact that I will be covering this game, I'm personally, I would rather do it. If I'm going to have to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd rather it also be Saturday night versus Sunday night. So if you're going to make us the night game, can you at least do me a solid, NFL? Make it Saturday. But all jokes aside, it's not about me. And this is a really exciting thing, I think, for the city. It's a really exciting thing for Commanders fans. Like, they have not been flexed. I will out myself a little bit here. I couldn't remember, and I was texting Commanders PR, and I was like, is this the first time that they've ever been flexed into Sunday night? Because the game flexing hasn't been around that long. It's only been around for like 12 seasons. And the Commanders largely have been terrible in the last 12 seasons. They haven't had a lot of meaningful games later in the season. And like, it used to be you could only flex late in the season. Now you can flex, like, I think it's like week 6 or 7 on. So there's a lot more flexing that happens, but there just hasn't been a lot of good Commanders late games or late season games, period. And apparently back in 2022, the Commanders did actually, with a Taylor Heineke game somewhere late in the season versus the New York Giants, who were good that year. That's the year that they wound up beating Minnesota in the playoffs, if I'm remembering correctly. They had a game flexed. So it has happened a couple of times. This is the first time since 2022 that the Commanders have had a game flexed. But it is a fairly rare occurrence, obviously, in their history. And I think it's really exciting, the fact that that could be a Sunday night clinching, all the other, like, the scenarios will be very, very clear. Because it's not like there's, hey, scoreboard watching here, whatever there. All the Week 17 games will have been played. And then Washington and Atlanta I guess there is a Monday nighter, I think. Maybe not that week, though. Let me double check that schedule real quick. Because I know they don't do a Monday nighter in Week 18. But Week 17, I'm not sure they want anybody going into the final week of the season on short rest. No, there is. It's Lions 49ers. So both those teams, unless the Niners, I guess, win, technically they could still be a part of this mess. But realistically, you're looking at the games that matter of consequence being done. And then you have a clear path. So you will have, and in fact, you'll know some of those on Saturday because like the Cardinals-Rams matchup is big in that. Where are they? The Seahawks that week face. Where are the Seahawks? They don't have a bye. Got to be on this list somewhere. There we go. Oh, they've got the Bears on Thursday that week. So that's why I didn't scroll up far enough. So those are the key teams to watch, and then Falcons Commanders wind up on Sunday night, and you'll know exactly what the situation is. There's a chance that you can clinch. There's also a chance that you might have to wait until Week 18, but there's a really good chance that, especially because the Seahawks have the biggest game left on the schedule, non-Commanders for the Commanders, is probably this weekend. It's probably the Seahawks and the Vikings, because if Minnesota handles business and the Seahawks are now in another hole, they're going to have to win out to even have a chance to tie the Commanders, assuming that the Commanders beat Atlanta and Dallas in their final two, which are not a given by any stretch of the imagination. But Washington's probably going to have to do that anyway. So, I mean, if they beat Philly, then like it's a totally different ballgame. But they're probably going to have to win at least one of the remaining 3, if not 2. And the Seahawks are the team, I think, to watch. And they have a tough schedule because they have Minnesota this weekend. So that's kind of I know that was very convoluted, Anthony, but that's the state of play.
No, I mean, I think you flushed out, the whole situation. I mean, and I think for us personally, we just got to try to take, one game at a time. Like, we are in full control of our destiny. And yes, the game against Philly is going to be tough, but, we'll also have 2 more opportunities after that to Do you think, I guess, 2 games for sure gets us in?
2 games for sure mathematically gets you in.
Yeah.
Because they hold that if they win 2 of the last 3 and the next team behind them is Seattle, Seattle, I guess if they beat Philly and they beat Dallas and they lose to Atlanta, I guess technically Atlanta can win out, and then that becomes complicated. I don't know if it's a head-to-head tiebreaker first. If it is and you've lost to Atlanta, like that could be bad. But that involves Atlanta winning out and including a win over you. You beat Atlanta, Atlanta's toast because you have a 2-game lead plus a head-to-head, and they can't catch you in conference tiebreaker and. So that's thing 1. Thing 2, if you win, or Seattle would have to win out, and then if you win 2, you're tied on record, but Washington would have the better in conference record, and thus they would get in. So you win 2, you're automatically in. You win 3, you're obviously automatically in. You win 1, you need help. Also, by the way, if you win 2, it's your first 11-win season since the 1990s, like the early 1990s. So that would be cool.
Need it, man. We need it.
Need it. Okay, 301-230-0980 is the phone number. 301-230-0980. That is where you call us on a Vibe Check Tuesday. How do you feel about the Commanders' win over the Saints? And if you have any thoughts on the game for Sunday night being flexed next week, Commanders, Falcons, Sunday Night Football, you can let us know now. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday, and we're taking your calls next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And we're taking your calls because it's a Vibe Check Tuesday. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Commanders, Saints, they survive. They get the win. No one seems to be particularly happy. Commanders also have Sunday Night Football flexed on Week 17, or flexed into Sunday Night Football, their matchup against the Falcons. We're taking your thoughts on all of it, starting with Saeed. Saeed, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, how's it going, bro?
I'm good, Saeed. How are you, bro?
I'm doing good. So, in terms of the Saints game, I'm feeling okay about it. My only concern is our remaining tight ends with Ertz down don't seem to excel with catching the ball on our team. And I'm also concerned that good defenses will find a way to box in McLaurin and force other guys to have separation. And I don't see any of our other wide receivers creating any separation. So I'm concerned about that. From the weapon standpoint, not so much as concerned with the defense stopping the run. I'm less concerned about that. But in terms of Atlanta, I think the Giants go to Atlanta and somehow put the nail in the coffin to the Kirk Cousins story. And I think the Sunday night flex is going to be Michael Penix and his first game in Washington.
So the only way that is Michael Penix's first game is if Atlanta's already been eliminated. There's 0% chance that they are putting him into a meaningful game. Because if it was close the way Kirk is playing right now, they would have gone to him. Because Kirk's not playing very well. But the thing is, when asked about it, they were like, yeah, he's not ready. Which is hilarious because the whole point of drafting Michael Penix was he's 25 years old and was supposed to be already ready, which is why it made no sense that a team that had just signed a veteran quarterback was the one drafting him. But without relitigating that whole thing again, I think the only way you see Michael Penix against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football making his debut is if Kirk is either injured or the Falcons have already been eliminated and they're just like, we'll figure out the Kirk thing this offseason. We're going to get Penix some experience. As for your other thoughts, and thanks, Saeed, as always, for the call, the tight end thing is definitely worrying. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Ben Sinnott is he is definitively not where they need him to be in order to step into Zach Ertz's shoes. Those shoes are too big for him. He doesn't have the ability to separate. I don't think that they trust him on some of the stuff that they trust Zach on. I think they put Bates in some of those situations and key spots. And I think that's probably the correct call at this point, not because I'm secretly trying to tell you that John Bates is an awesome tight end. He's just reliable. You know what he can and can't do. Sinnott's a wild card. You're like, you should be able to do this, but you don't always. And if you don't do it right, then we're in some trouble. So could Tyree Jackson, who they signed to the practice squad today, wind up and playing this week? Maybe. Colson Yankoff has been on IR. Could they pull him back onto the roster? Maybe. That is something worth watching. But Yankoff's an undrafted free agent who is a rookie and hasn't been playing all year, or hasn't been playing in weeks and weeks and weeks. So I don't know that is exactly, if he's even healthy. I think he is. I think Kime said he's healthy on his show, on the podcast, and John would know. But yeah, that's kind of the situation there. I do think De'Ami Brown had a really good game. I do think that some of the stuff they asked Luke McCaffrey to do, you can ask KJ Osborne to do, and he will be an upgrade as long as he knows the assignment. Luke definitely missed some assignments in this game, and you're like, oh yeah, he's still a rookie figuring this thing out. That's maybe why he hasn't played as much, even though I think there's been some clamoring, including from me at times, to get him on the field more. But the one thing that I do take out as a huge positive from the New Orleans game that was a huge problem in the Philly game the first time around relative to Terry is that was by far the most they moved him around this season. Terry played 60 snaps out wide. There were 41 on the left and 19 on the right. So I've told you it doesn't have to be a 50-50 split, but like a 60-30 type of split. That's even aggressive, maybe 60-40, 70-30. Even if it's 80-20, where it's just not predictable, that's good. And they got there. They got it to where it's 2/3 of the snaps he was lined up on the right side, when he's lined up wide. And it was also pretty even. He's lined up 10 snaps in the slot, and it was like, I think 6 on the right and 6 on the left, 4 on the right. So he moved around slot versus outside. He moved around left versus right. Like, they moved him around, and they got good stuff off of that. And some of their shot plays are because they get Terry matched up on the right guy at the right time. And so the way that Philly was able to lock in and bracket Terry at all times last time out, I don't think that's going to be on the table, because I think Cliff has, I don't want to say he's finally learned his lesson, but like, he's learned that in this offense with this group of receivers, he can't just line Terry up to the left like he did early in his coaching career with guys like DeAndre Hopkins, because maybe he had a Larry Fitzgerald inside, or he had a younger, more prime Zach Ertz that was taking attention. He had multiple guys. He doesn't have that here. And so he's got to make sure that his number one guy, Terry, is getting moved around to places where he can get good matchups and get the football. Let's go to Vaughn. Vaughn, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being on the Hoffman Show. I want to try to make it real quick, because I know you got calls coming in. And my lead check is that I'm just still a little worried, because we then came off of 2 buys and not really focused. You know, I'm thinking with the second bye, we should have been a little bit more focused, and we had a lot of penalties, and I'm skeptical about that scenario with the Redskins and the Commanders, because that's been a trend with the Redskins coming off a bye. So I'm a little worried about that. And one other question I want to ask y'all, and just to see, you know, where y'all at with this. I think Robinson runs too high. And dealing with these type of defenses and with Philly defense, you know, he's not as shifty with the type of O-line that we got. You know, when you had Emmett and you had Rigo, them O-lines was very good. So they can run in between the gaps. But when you have a Jaquan and like a Barry Sanders with a subpar O-line like what he had with the Giants and when Barry had with the Detroit, they were shifty backs. They can make the line look good. And I look at Robinson, not when you're going up against a defense like Philly, it's not shifty enough. Sometimes you got to make, players miss to be effective. And I'm just a little skeptical about his running style now this late in the season. And I'm seeing his footwork is not really, not very shifty as far as a running back concerned. And I just don't see us beating Philly because, with the penalties with New Orleans and
I hear you, Vaughn. All right, I do got to run because we're up against the clock. I'll respond to you real quick, but I appreciate your call. First thing to work in reverse. I think that Brian Robinson played remarkably well against the Saints, considering the O-line was an absolute disaster in the running game. He was running into messy looks all game. And yes, would Barry Sanders have been better in his prime? Yes, Barry Sanders is the best running back any of us have ever seen. He is the GOAT in my book in terms of just pure ability and production. You take prime Barry Sanders in any era of the NFL, put him behind any offensive line, and he's still going to the Hall of Fame. He was that good. Brian Robinson is not that good. But I do think Brian Robinson's pretty freaking good. And I think his ability to fall forward, his vision, like he can make the most of stuff at times. He doesn't necessarily do it in a shifty, make you miss kind of way. He just hits the right angle. And sometimes things that should be -2 become +2. But that hidden yardage, that 4 yards right there matters a lot. Because the difference between second and 12 versus 2nd and 8. Which means if you gain 5 yards on second down, no matter how you get it, it's now 3rd and 3 versus 3rd and 8. So that becomes a really big deal, or 3rd and 7. Like, that's a really big deal, the consistency with which he just gets the most. And I do think he has some big play abilities we saw against Tennessee if you can get stuff blocked up correctly. Does that mean you can't upgrade over him? That like an Ashton Genty out of Boise State, who I know Dane Brugler from The Athletic mocked to them in his first mock draft of, it's not really draft season, but first mock draft of this round. Like, okay, Ashton Genty might be a really, really special talent. And if that's the case and they want to go that direction, they think he's by far the best player on their board. Run this tape back in May, or April, but I don't hate that idea. But I think B-Rob's really good, and I also don't think that we should confuse running high versus being tall. B-Rob's pretty tall for a running back, so I don't think that he's got a leverage issue either. On the penalties and stuff, yeah, I typically push back on the not focused, not this. I don't know what it was, whether it's focused, lack of attention during the week, just not being sharp. I don't know what it was, but they were super not locked in on the details in a way that they haven't been in almost any other game this year. Ironically, outside the Dallas game, which is their second biggest rest game of the year, coming off the Thursday night game against Philly the first time around, kind of the mini bye, if you will. So I don't know whether it was they installed more stuff and they didn't practice as much of the old stuff and they weren't as sharp, or they don't have as many reps with the new things. Whatever it was, they have got to get their details down from getting lined up correctly, and that's Olamide Zaccheaus not leaving early on the play that gets called back for a TD. It's Luke McCaffrey narrowing down his split so he has a chance of making the block that you need to on that 3rd and 1 at the goal line. Whether it's any of the penalties, they weren't sharp. And you can't win like that against the best teams in the league. And I would say it happens to every team every year. The fact that it's only happened 2 times in 14 games for the Commanders overall is pretty good. But I would like to have some higher confidence that that is not going to happen again. And I would love to know why it is happening off extended rest, because that's something they need to obviously fix next year. But unless they make the Super Bowl, they're probably not going to have a bye for the rest of this season. When we get back, more of your calls at 301-230-0980. We got our guy Gary in Upper Marlboro on hold, and then we got a whole bunch of lines open for you on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Taking your calls on this 5-Check Tuesday at 301-230-0980. Let's go to our guy, Gary, in Upper Marlboro. Gary, thanks for holding. Appreciate you. You are back on the Hoffman Show.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and happy holidays to you. Here's the problem that I have with the Saints game. In a vacuum, if it was out on by itself, I would say, okay, it was just a bad performance. They probably weren't looking around this team to get to Philadelphia, blah, 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 blah. But the concern that I have is this team is simply not playing their best football. Take that Tennessee game away, where Tennessee probably played one of the worst games I've ever seen a team play, okay? You take that game away and you look at all of the games going back to the Chicago game, they haven't played well. They could easily be on a losing streak right now. And that's the concern that I have is this is a New Orleans team that was ready to get beat down. They had XFL-level quarterbacks, and somehow in some way they were playing. And I know that there were a lot of bad calls and so forth, but they didn't come and put this team away in the second half. They only scored 6 points in the second half. So I don't know if this is a byproduct of the bye or whatever, but it seems like this is a consistent level of play where they're not playing their best football except for that Tennessee game. Having said that, I think they have a shot to beat Philadelphia because of the odds of Philadelphia having to win. They're on a 10-game winning streak, okay? And if in order for them to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, I think it's 16 straight games. The odds say that's not going to happen. So, and Washington had some moments against Philadelphia, and I think that, the rivalry, they have a shot against Philadelphia. Now, would I bet on it? No. But I wouldn't be surprised at home that they find a way to beat Philadelphia. And if that happens, then everything that I just said about the way they played in these last 6 or 7 games goes out the window because they beat the best team in football, and then I think they have something going forward. But I'm just concerned with this New Orleans game because their pattern in the last half of the season is they haven't played well, and they could easily be on a losing streak, save for that Tennessee game.
So, Gary, this is why this game confuses the mess out of me, because there are huge parts of me that would 100% agree with you. I could also present an argument that, one, the Tennessee game, this is the easiest counter. It's like, yeah, but the Tennessee game does exist. And I know Tennessee was bad, but, they beat them sideways. They took advantage maximally of a bad Tennessee team and took them behind the woodshed and did their business. So that is part one. Part two is I think there is an easy alternate narrative for this game, which is the Commanders, actually didn't down in, down out play that badly in this game. And I know it feels really bad because of how the score line went, but they didn't go 3 and out in the entire game. The only three-play sequence that they had was the end of the first half. The half ended. It ended when they had a first down, so it wasn't like they went 3 and out. So 0 3 and outs offensively, despite the fact that their offensive line did not play very well. They found ways to overcome that. Jaden made a bunch of plays. There were other guys that made plays. And then defensively, they forced a ton of 3 and outs. They would have had 2 or 3 more if it wasn't for some penalties. The BSJ penalty, which is ridiculous on Benjamin, not a bad call, ridiculous. What is he doing? Get your hands out of the dude's face. That's a 3 and out that turned into a 10-play drive. And so all in all, down in, down out, I think they actually played pretty well this game. And on some level, you have to give them credit for figuring out a way to win, even though there was a bunch of stuff that kept happening that was trying to undermine them. And at times they were undermining themselves. But I also, it doesn't feel good. And the margins are really close, and I do agree that it doesn't feel like they're playing their best football, which is why I really struggle on kind of what to make of this game. But are any of those counterpoints convincing at all to you?
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing I would say is the defense playing well. They were playing against XFL-level quarterbacks, okay? And the fact that the offensive line didn't play well was that, I don't know that the Saints have a murderer's row on the defensive line. So the question is, why were they playing so poorly? That's our team.
But I would say a lot of it had to do with Biotish being out. They were discombobulated all day. And like little things that I didn't even notice till I watched the tape back and Logan mentioned is like, hey, does this feel off to you? Like the timing of everything was off. Like Dieter would snap the ball and like start going, and everyone else was just a half beat late. And that's partly, oh, well, okay, you should be able to do that if you have a backup center. Yeah, but he got no reps all week. Like, he was a surprise Sunday start when Biotish got sick. It wasn't like he was injured and got reps. And look, you have to be able to overcome those things, and they did just enough. But I don't think Sam Cosmi is going to all of a sudden be a bad football player. He was really bad on Sunday. And so, like, on that level, it doesn't really concern me because I don't think the best player, arguably, on the entire team is going to have multiple bad games in a row.
I agree with you on the Biotish thing. That's not something that I took into account. The center can do that, but yeah. But again, I think they have a chance against Philly for the reason that I stated.
Yeah, I agree.
And, appreciate the call.
Yeah, no, appreciate you calling always, Gary. Good chat as usual. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Getting your feelings going into these final three games on a Vibe Check Tuesday. Let's go to Kenny in Charlotte. Kenny, thanks for listening. Thanks for calling in. You are on the Hoffman Show on a Vibe Check Tuesday.
Always a pleasure, Craig. How's it going?
Sir. Yes, sir. Doing well. Hope you are as well.
Yeah, man. I would say I'm kind of like nervous, anxious, simply because we're in a good space that we haven't been in what feels like forever, man. And I just don't want them to blow it. You know what I'm saying? With these last three games, it's unfamiliar territory for me. You know, we've in the past backed into playoff berths, and this one just feels different. It feels like we're supposed to be here, and it seems like, you know, it's a little too soon, you know, but I'm happy at the same time, which leads to a question that I had for you last week is while we are doing good and most likely will end up in the playoffs, are there any positions that you can foresee the management saying, you know what, we're good here, when maybe we're really not, just because we made the playoffs and we have a good record? Are there any positions that they could overlook and say, we want to keep it good, we want to keep these players, and then not move forward to somebody better for the long term? I hope I articulated it.
Yeah, no, I think you articulated it great. And I think you articulated it like someone who's lived through a lot of Washington football nonsense in front offices over the last 1, 2, or 3 decades, depending on how fast or how long you want to go back, where you've had plenty of guys in those positions convince themselves that they're okay. And the reason I would say, like, are there positions that need upgrading? Yes. Are they going to upgrade all of them? Probably not, just because free agency and draft, like, you only have so many resources. But do I think any of those will happen in this particular case with this front office because they are lying to themselves? No, I don't. Mm-hmm. And I think you see that on tape often where they understand who they are. And there are guys that they try to protect where, like, they know Andrew Wiley one-on-one 15 times a game is not a good formula. Like, Andrew Wiley has some strengths that they've really leaned into this year. His movement in the run game and his ability to get out on the perimeter. Like, their best runs have been these guard tackle pull plays where Andrew Wiley's out in front, and he's been great at it. But leaving him one-on-one on the edge, like Eric Bieniemy did 25 times a game last year with no chip help, is a nightmare. And so because they know that, and they know what happens if all of a sudden that guy doesn't have to chip, could they go upgrade at right tackle? Absolutely. Could they also be like, we're making this work and we like what he does in the run game, let's just stick with it and invest our resources somewhere else? I think that's also a possibility. So I guess, like, specifically to answer your question, no, because I think they know who they are, they're realistic about it, and they've shown that all year, and I think that they also then will be able to act upon that in the offseason. But that doesn't mean every single space that fans, and even, you know, me or Logan or anybody else, wants to see them upgrade is necessarily going to be upgraded, because I think that there's some stuff where they're going to have to make hard choices, and they'll just plan around some of the weaknesses again next year, because that's the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I have to really be thankful for where we are this year. So I don't mean to push back against some of the callers that, you know, seem to have these expectations like we should have done this or should have done that. But, you know, and I guess they can. But for real, man, I'm grateful. I'm like, man, I didn't see this coming. I didn't see us 9 and 5 and in this position this soon. So, I just don't want us to get overly comfortable with the positions and overlook them next year.
No, I totally get it, Kenny. And don't let anybody tell you how to feel. You feel whatever feelings you want to feel. Kenny, appreciate the call as always. Thank you. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show. We got at least 3 more. We got a couple of phone lines open. We're going to squeeze all these calls in before the end of the hour next. And then Mitch Tischler joins us coming up at 5 p.m. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Mitch Tischler on a Tischler Tuesday coming up at 5 p.m. Of course, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with J.P. Finley. He'll join us at 5. Jaden Daniels, Take Command, Tape Tuesday at 5:30. Our NFL tiers at 6. That's going to get interesting. So Loaded show still to come here on the Team 980. Breaking baseball news, just real quick, because this literally just came across. As hot stove stuff is heating up in Major League Baseball. The Cubs are trading Cody Bellinger to the Yankees. So there you go. Baseball fans, baseball. Cody Bellinger to the Yankees from the Cubs. That according to Jeff Passan at ESPN. Back to the football. Vibe Check Tuesday, 301-230-0980. How you feeling about the Commanders off their win over New Orleans, headed into Philly, and this final 3-game stretch of the season? Let's go to Reggie. Reggie, thanks for holding. You are on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Craig? Love the show as always.
Appreciate it, bro.
I don't understand, man, how people are like, I don't want to say down, but listening all week. Craig, I get it. You know what I mean? We was up 14-0. I think that drive before half, I think if we maybe scored one more, got 17, if we missed field goal, I get it. It came down to, a nail biter, which you shouldn't have. But Craig, it's the NFL. And more importantly, I think and you probably can agree with this, we're 2 years ahead of schedule. Like, we just had a complete freaking roster overhaul. So for me, man, I'm excited about where we are. There's no way. I don't care what I'm talking about your diehard, which I am, like the glass is always full, that I expected for us to be 9-5 at this point. So with us being 9-5, I'm really looking at this Eagles game. This is according to like pretty much all of the rankings, the best team in the NFL. They won 11 straight. I'm looking to see really just, mano a mano, coaching on coaching. How do we really stack up against the Eagles? The first game, again, we if you think about the first game, the Eagles played Dallas, but that was without Dak, and they was crushing them where they hurt. I don't even think played in the fourth quarter. So I'm not saying that was kind of a bye, but that wasn't a physical game like we played against Pittsburgh that came down to the fourth quarter. So we in a physical battle against Pittsburgh. They, again, in more of a, kind of a not relaxed because it's an NFL game, but they had a rather easier game against Dallas than we played them on a short week. So I want to see really, equal rest. As far as injuries are concerned, I'm going to be really curious as far as some of the injuries that we had, especially with the offensive line, because they, them two boys in the middle, but Philly is putting a lot of pressure on opposing offensive line. So as long as we can come in relatively healthy, I want to see how we really stack up with the Eagles. Because remember, Craig, what was that, fourth quarter? It was 13-12.
No, it was. It was. And to add on to what you're saying, Reggie, and I appreciate your perspective on this because, like, you have to both zoom in and zoom out at the same time, which sounds impossible. But, like, within the context of the Saints game, it's really frustrating because they should have put that game away on a bunch of different plays because they're just the better team. But should they be the better team at this point with where they are in the rebuild and how bad the roster was last year and how much turnover? You're absolutely right on a bigger picture standpoint. And the other thing I'll add, too, is there is probably no team that I'd least like to face schematically on a short week with a rookie quarterback than the Philadelphia Eagles for an offense. So defensively, what they present, and Vic Fangio's the guy that invented the defense, he does stuff that nobody else does, and they do it better than all the other teams that do versions of it. And so that, like, zone match, is it man, is it zone, how do I progress through this, to try to game plan for and teach a young player that, even one as smart and dedicated as Jaden Daniels, on 4 days rest, 3 days rest, or 3 days of prep time, like, that's nasty. That is really tough.
Road.
And so I'm very, on the road too. I'm very, although, let's be real. Philadelphia ain't that much farther from Ashburn than FedEx or than Northwest Stadium, but we can talk about that a different day. Maybe tomorrow as we'll have more updates on the RFK bill. Point is, that was a tough one. That was a really tough one schedule-wise. Every team has them. They performed admirably for 3.5 quarters, and then things went sideways. But I'm very much looking forward to Sunday as well. Reggie, thanks for the call. As always, happy holidays. Let's go to Keith. Keith, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, gentlemen. How are you? Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Welcome to the show, Keith. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. I wanted to mention a couple of things, and then I'll talk about the receiver core, and I'll keep it short. But I'm concerned about an ongoing trend that we have of playing really well in the first half and then nothing offensively in the second half. Like, that's That's something that continuously happens, and I'm sort of worried about. Is that game planning, or what is that? Or we're just taking our foot off the gas? And then secondly, with Jaden, as much as he's played well, as I watch it, and you tell me if this is me, but literally every time he decides to start running, he stops looking downfield, because there are many, many times when he could just take the dump off, or the short, drop it off to a running back or somebody in the flat, and he doesn't do it, and he either gets hit or he gets no gain and runs out of bounds. So those are the trends. And then the last part of it is, as we're talking about our receivers, like, I wonder why we don't talk about Jamison Crowder enough. I mean, I really like Jamison. I remember from when he was here with us the first time, and he was one of my favorite players. He's great in the slot. He's shifty, which is one of the issues we don't have with a lot of the other receivers. But it doesn't seem like anybody is considering him as an option to solve some of our issues with the receivers. And I will stop and let you talk.
Keith, appreciate the call. And great questions, great points. Let me work in reverse, and let me keep you on the phone just so if I forget the first thing you talk about. Crowder is, look, I covered Jamison when I was on the beat. Jamison's one of my favorite guys. It's kind of funny because when I walk in the locker room now, I don't know a lot of those guys, but Jamison and I kind of give each other a look like, hey, I actually do know you. So I have a soft spot for Jamison on a personal level. And as a player, I think he is useful. He still is shifty, but his lack of size at times shows up. He's not as reliable as a blocker in the run game. Like, he fights hard. He's just not that good at it. And so if he's on the field, is that a giveaway / you're just giving away a blocker if you do decide to run it, versus guys like Diami or OZ who are a little tougher in that realm. And he doesn't have, like, for as quick as he is in short areas, he doesn't have great vertical speed. So there's some limitations in his game that way. And at some point, as much as I like him and think that in certain situations he's really helpful, like, he's been around the league a little bit. He's bounced around. He was signed here on the practice squad. Other teams could have signed him. He was on IR for most of the year, but last year, like, he was available if teams wanted him for portions of the season. So I just think, like, we have to be realistic about who he is, which is probably like a fourth receiver, and they're using him that way. And I think they can use him more against, like, man-to-man coverage, and they did some of that on Sunday, and I think they'll continue to do that the rest of the season. So that's the Jamison Crowder part of it. What was the other thing that you mentioned before that?
About the disturbing trend of not
first half, second half.
Offensively in the second half.
Yeah. So it definitely has been a trend, and they've gotten up big in some first halves, and things have not gone as well. But it also is hard because here's the second half on Sunday. I have my offensive notes in front of me. So the first play, or the first drive of the second half, ends at the 1 yard line with that play where Luke McCaffrey doesn't do what he needs to do, and they don't get in, and they kick a 23-yard field goal, which makes me want to pull my hair out. The second drive of that half ends on a field goal. There was a sack on that drive, and that kind of undid it. And Jaden just had a bad play. That happens. There's some other stuff in that drive where there's some near misses. The third drive of that half, it ends on that was probably their worst drive of the game. But all in all, you have bad drives. Okay, that's 1 out of 3 that I would say is a bad drive. And the final drive of the game it's a 4+ minute drive that's like over 10 plays that ends on a missed field goal that they should have gotten late. And they also have a play that gets them inside the 10-yard line that's called back on a correct but kind of ticky-tack penalty on Nick Allegretti. So, and by the way, on both of those last two drives, the one that I said is the worst drive of the game, and the last drive that ends in a field goal, those two drives have the 3 missed opportunities from Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin, which all could have been 50+ yard touchdowns. So, like, sometimes it's not game plan, and I think it's a great question because it allows us to illustrate that it's not some game plan change. Like, Cliff clearly had some haymakers that he saved in his back pocket, and he called him at the end, and you just didn't hit him. So it's execution. It's not committing penalties. It's hitting the big-time throws. It's stuff like that. And sometimes you hit him in the first half, you don't in the second. I don't know if there's any real magic to that or just kind of how it's gone. But it definitely is an execution thing to me, not a game plan thing, because those opportunities existed, and they just didn't take advantage of them.
Got it.
There you go.
The other question was about Jaden taking those dump downs instead.
Yeah, I think that's the next step for him. Like, he's a young player, and I think you have to let him figure some of this stuff out on his own, because you also don't get the 3rd and 16 conversion for a first down if you don't let him scramble around some. And so he's going to make some plays, and other times you're like, man, just take the easy one, take the check down. And I think just as Lamar did, as Josh Allen did, as some of these great mobile quarterbacks are at the top of the NFL, they figured it out as they went, and I think Jaden is smart enough that he will as well. But it's definitely an ongoing process, and your eyes are not deceiving you that the optimal situation would be for him to check it down a little more often. Keith, great call, especially for a first one. Really appreciate it, and thanks as always for listening. When we get back, Mitch Tischler joins us. It's a Tischler Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. The air horns in 5 o'clock on a Tuesday means it's time for Not My Beat with a very special guest.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Tuesdays mean Tischler, as in Mitch Tischler, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with JP Finley at Monumental Sports. Mitchell, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Let me tell you, Craig, you have an unbelievable producer there. Anthony was warming up the air horns when he called me. He's on point, ready to go. Love to see it.
He's one of a kind, that Anthony Haney. He's a talent. Anthony, you're a talented fellow over there.
Thank you, sir.
Do you feel like a DJ every time you get to play the air horns? Like
Every single time.
You feel like what is Shaq's DJ name? Like DJ Diesel?
I think so.
Yeah, you know that Mitch. I don't know. You probably know this. You're a Monumental employee. That he's performing after the Magic game in March here.
I know. I'm excited.
I mean, are you going to be out there at midcourt just throwing down?
I mean, who else is better on the ones and twos than DJ Diesel and DJ Tischler?
No one. That's actually the correct answer is absolutely no one. There's no pivot into the game that's going to be smooth here. I'm a professional. I'm typically pretty good at the pivot thing. I got nothing, Mitch. We're just gonna start talking about football. I really struggle with what to make of this game. They won. That's fantastic. That part I know. The performance, like it was tight. They took the 2-point conversion thing at the end. Part of that is because of the clock shenanigans. But even then, it's probably closer than you want. But also, you go back and watch the tape, and it's like actually played pretty good. It feels like most snaps. Here we sit on Tuesday, almost 48 hours later. What do you make of that performance on Sunday?
Certainly was an uneven performance. You hate to see a second half when you go into halftime up 14-0 and have to hold off a 2-point conversion for the win. But I think there are takeaways that you can be okay with. I think the Marshawn Lattimore, the fact that, he was out there, he was healthy, he played the game. The Saints obviously know him very well, decided they didn't want to target him. And the fact that Mikey Sainer still stepped up and had the interception, had a couple PVUs, played pretty nicely on the back end there, I think is a nice preview to what you hope this secondary looks like. Obviously, you're concerned about the concussions with both Zach Ertz and Jeremy Chin, but ultimately I liked what I saw for the most part out of the defense, because despite the fact that Jake Haener and quite frankly Spencer Rattler aren't particularly good quarterbacks, for the most part they did a pretty good job of not allowing that Saints offense to get going. And you saw a healthy Marshawn Lattimore on the defense, and for me that's the takeaway that I get from him.
So if we stick with the defense first, they generated a ton of pressure in the first half. They were not as consistent with pressure in the second half. Anything that you could identify that you kind of lined that up to?
I mean, I think you went from having a statue in Jake Haener back there in the second half when Spencer Rattler came out. He was able to move around a little bit. I also think they were trying to play a couple little mind games with some young quarterbacks. I think you saw Joe Witt trying to butch up the defense a little bit, kind of fake a couple blitzes, bait Spencer Rattler into some bad throws, which ultimately he didn't make on Sunday. But if you've watched the tape from him and looked at the numbers that he's put up here in the NFL, he's kind of prone to make a couple bad throws a game. And we know how much Joe Witt Jr. wants to get those turnover numbers up. I think obviously he had to be excited about, Sainer still getting the INT there. And, I think they were hoping that they were going to be able to bait a young quarterback into a few more mistakes, so they weren't quite as electric getting after the quarterback because of that.
Yeah. Also, Mitchell, how do we teach everyone that's on defense that's not named Mike Sainer still to catch? Like Frankie Louvu got hit in the face with the ball. Chin had one, if not two, go through his hands. What do we got to do to get turnovers? And if we do, is Joe Witt going to hand us all $1,000? Because I think that man's head is going to combust. I thought it was going to combust Thursday before he had 2 or 3 more dropped interceptions on Sunday. He said it was like 12 in the last month, balls that have hit them in the hands. What do we got to do there?
I'll tell you what, if you and I could figure out a way to teach DBs to catch the football, we'd be making way more than $1,000, Joey.
We'd be making DJ Diesel money. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Listen, but I will say that the downside of it is that they're not creating these turnovers. I would say the plus side of it is you can see the defensive formations and the defensive plan working. These guys are in position to make plays. They're just not able to do it. Sunday, I think, was a little frustrating because some of your better players, guys who you think are going to be contributors, beyond this season, were the ones that weren't making the plays. But if you go back earlier in the season, you've seen guys in position ready to, pick a ball off or punch a ball out or, make a play to get a strip sack, whatever it may be. And you look at it and you're like, man, this plan is there. You can see this defense. The guys are in the right positions. The guys are, able to are able to be in position to make plays. They just don't quite have the individual talent sometimes to go do it. So short term, it's very frustrating, especially when you see guys like Luvu and Chin drop balls because they're better football players. But long term, I like what I'm seeing from this defense, and I like what Joe was putting out there with the quote-unquote limited talent that he has at the moment.
I think that is a great point. Like, the system is working. The pieces have to execute because those guys are there. And again, DBs and linebackers not being able to catch is a tale as old as time in the NFL. It's why the old joke, like, oh, that's why he plays DB, exists. Mitch Tischler with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast. Last thing from the defense real quick, as I peel through my notes again from the second half and kind of trying to figure out the pressure thing. They also ran the ball more in the second half, which is an odd thing that the Saints did considering they were down. But they got a couple of chunks and kind of would go back to it at some of these softer coverage structures as the Commanders, I don't want to say went into prevent mode, but certainly were not trying to give up big explosive plays through the air to a guy in Spencer Rattler who's very willing to throw if you give him an inch the ball down the field. And some of their guys up front got a little bit. There was some real movement up front. What did you make of how the D-line played against the run and then also their ability to generate pass rush or not in this game?
Yeah, I mean, that Saints offensive line isn't particularly good. The interior of that offensive line, center, both guards are not starters from the beginning of the season, guys that had to fill in because of injury. You have two very young tackles on the outside. It's a group that I thought this Commanders D-line was going to be able to take a little bit more advantage of. But I think what you said there about not wanting to get beat over the top is a very important piece to all this because, again, it wasn't a prevent defense, like you said, but you are looking at a quarterback that I would not trust to put together a 10 or 15 play drive to go down and score a touchdown. And so I'm okay with a little bit of the bend that they gave, especially early in that second half to the Saints there. I do want to see more individual wins. They're doing a good job, rushing as a collective and not letting quarterbacks break contain and all those different things. But you want to see your guys win some one-on-one battles and get a free run, at the quarterback. And I think we saw that from the safety line against Jaden Daniels. And obviously Cam Jordan is an unbelievable football player. And, I don't know that the Commanders have somebody that necessarily is of his, overall skill level. But that's a guy who is disruptive because he goes out and wins a one-on-one battle and gets to Jaden before he's able to, go around and make his plays. I want to see more of that from Daron Payne. I want to see more of that from Dorrance Armstrong. It was good to see Dorrance get back on the sack train again. It had been a few weeks since he had one. I think we've seen kind of nicely from Dante Fowler over the season. He's done a pretty good job of winning some battles one-on-one, but there needs to be, some more alpha play from this D-line. And I'm hoping that, they're starting to see the importance of kind of, playing within a defense, but also whooping the guy in front of you and going and making a big play.
Yeah, 19 pressures according to PFF in this game, which is a pretty solid number. And Payne actually had 4 of them. Had a batted ball or 2 in this game as well. But you'd love to see just like some of those dominant sequences a little bit more often. I think, and the consistency throughout a game is, I think, what everyone's kind of hoping can eventually get there. On the offensive line, Mitch, it was a weird game because they gave up a ton of sacks. The sacks weren't necessarily their fault. Jaden was kind of the culprit for a fair amount of those. He played incredible. They played poorly. All those things aren't supposed to go together. It seems like I'm talking about 2 different games, but that's how I saw it. What did you make of the Commanders' O-line struggles in this game? Whatever struggles you attribute to them in pass protection, and then especially their inability to get things going on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start quickly with the Jaden Daniels and the sacks. Yes, 8 is a big number. A couple of those were 0-yard rushes. I thought it was interesting in post-game, Dan Quinn pointed out that they've been working with Jaden at staying in the pocket and trying to work his way through progressions a little bit more. And I'm hoping that was the reason that we saw him hold the ball in the pocket a little more often this week against the Saints than we've seen kind of in weeks past, in that was a kind of a coaching point this week that they were working on him with, and he was trying to execute in game. Because quite frankly, him holding the ball hasn't really been a big problem this season. It just didn't look particularly good on Sunday. And to me, I put a lot of the O-line issues on, what happened at center. Having your starting center, Tyler Biadasz, go out with the sickness, morning of the game. Michael Dieter's a veteran. He and Biadasz were at Wisconsin together. Biadasz has credited Dieter a lot throughout his career for somebody who helped kind of get him going and learning how to play that center position at a elevated level. I think Dieter struggled pretty mightily, not really in the one-on-one blocking per se, but being that kind of leader of the offensive line, identifying defenses, moving protections. I think his timing was clearly off with Jaden Daniels. I thought his snaps came back, a little bit kind of lollipopped, a little soft back to Jaden. And particularly when they tried, especially in that second half, to get some of those tempo plays going and the timing plays where you get the ball out quickly. When the snap comes back slowly, it just throws off the entire timing of the play and is an issue. And then, even pre-snap, the timing of when Dieter would snap the ball back to Jaden, I think he caught Sam Cosmi a couple times when Sam was still looking back at Jaden, waiting for, the snap count. So I just think that the timing was kind of thrown off by the center position and the late add of Dieter there. Ideally, that's not a problem, but, I'm hoping that we can write off the sack, some of the sack issues, some of the not being able to get the running game going against the very, very, very porous Saints run defense, to the fact that you didn't have your starting center in there. You had a center and quarterback who hadn't worked together a ton, and I think that kind of showed on Sunday.
Mitch Tischler, Beltway Football Podcast, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Yeah, the snap thing was so weird. Just to see an offensive line that typically offensive line play, especially good ones, and this team this year has largely been one of those in this regard anyway. Like, they're so coordinated. It's so synchronized. And to see, like, Dieter snap the ball and go, and everyone else is still kind of mostly in their stance, you're like, what is going on here? And Cosmi, I thought, had his worst game of the season, and I do wonder how much of that was directly correlated to just feeling like he was behind all day, and the timing of all these combinations are just off. And so when people, obviously the immediate reaction, especially because we did a segment last week in our Take Command mailbag about Cornelius Lucas versus Andrew Wiley, immediately I think a lot of people were like, oh, well, see, it should have just been Lucas. And it's like, no, Andrew Wiley was just fine. Actually, I would argue he was arguably the best offensive lineman they had in this game. The problem was everyone else, and the closer you got to the center, it seemed like the bigger the problems were.
Yeah, there was a draw play they tried to run. I believe it was the middle of the third quarter that kind of highlighted the snap issues across the board. You had Dieter snap the ball while Cosmi was turning back from the quarterback to catch up with the D tackle in front of him. Dieter gets beat immediately. Cosmi holds on, decently, but then ultimately gets beat because he started behind on the play. The snap goes back to Jaden, kind of lollipops and high. That throws off the timing of the delay handoff to Brian Robinson. Ultimately, he gets drops for a 3-4 yard loss, and it just kind of, to me, was all encompassing of what some of those issues were along the offensive line. And quite frankly, I think Cosmi gets a little bit too much blame sometimes. Maybe that's not the right word, but with this fan base, because we expect them to play at such a high level all time. But with everything that happens along the offensive line, it's choreographed. And when one piece is off or one piece is late or there's one piece of miscommunication, it can make somebody look really, really bad, even if that wasn't their mistake that caused the play to get blown up. So I am hopeful that things get better. I think they need to get better. Biotish hopefully will be back this week against Philly. That interior of the Eagles D-line is really, really good, and they gave the Commanders O-line a lot of trouble last time they played. So it's a really good chance to bounce back against a really good team and show who you are.
Last thing I ask you about, Mitch, is the receiving core. Obviously, with first game without Noah Brown, you lose Zach Ertz midway through. All in all, how do you think that they did? And then, it's kind of funny that KJ Osborne, who I'm not like, yeah, that guy's awesome. There's just a couple plays in this game where, like, man, he would have been really helpful, including that 3rd and 1 at the goal line where Luke McCaffrey doesn't do near enough and Cam Jordan winds up with the sack. But how do you feel about this receiving core without Noah Brown in game 1? And then how much bigger does Zach Ertz and his availability become against Philadelphia, considering what we saw?
Yeah, I'll start with Luke McCaffrey on Cam Jordan. That's a really tough ask of Luke McCaffrey. That's a big man who's really good. Luke didn't get over there, so certainly he owns some of it. But I think when we talked about Noah Brown's injury last week during this segment, one of the things I brought up was how good Noah Brown was in blocking in the run game and helping extend some of these plays. And I think, you're going to see some of that along the way here because as much as, they have a bunch of guys that can fill in, that was one thing that Noah did particularly well was block in the run game. I really liked what I saw from Jamison Crowder. I think it's going to be interesting to see as he gets more involved in this offense how they deploy him. I love seeing him, working on special teams as well. But I think in the slot, he's just a crafty veteran that kind of has been there and done that and finds ways to kind of get open. Not so indifferent from Olamide Zaccheaus per se, but I do think that he's a little bit more. I think Zaccheaus might have a little bit more quickness, but I think Crowder has a little bit more wit / veteran savviness, whatever the word you want to use for it is. I think he's going to be a bigger part of this offense as we go forward, and I like the idea of seeing him out there. But ultimately, between the Ertz injury, which is probably at least going to sideline him this week, who knows with concussions what happens. You're going to have some guys step up, and it's a really, really, to me, big opportunity for a guy like Ben Sennett, who hasn't been a huge part of this offense, has shown a willingness to stick his nose in there and make some blocks when they come with that 12 or 13 personnel, and I think we're going to see him line up in the slot, not necessarily in a 3-point stance as much, and they'll get a chance to run some routes and show off some of those hands and quickness that the Commanders drafted him for.
The thing is for him, though, does he actually have quickness, or is he just kind of fast and powerful? Someone was commenting on our YouTube page earlier and was like, people think he's more like Kittle or Kelsey, and he's actually more like Gronk. And I'm like, yeah, but Gronk was 6'7". You can't play like Gronk if you're not built like Gronk. And so that's the thing that I really wonder is if Ertz is out, I actually think Crowder becomes the more direct replacement. You need a guy that can reliably win inside, and his quickness can do that. And then ironically, the guy who I think actually should replace him as a blocker and, gets more reps is KJ Osborne. Like if KJ Osborne is ready to go last week, I don't think Luke McCaffrey's in that spot on the end of the line of scrimmage, knowing I got to tighten my split down, and my number one job is to make sure that Cam Jordan doesn't get in the backfield. So I think Osborne is helpful to replace some part of the tight end production, because I think that's also, by the way, a Zach Ertz play. I think that's a 13 personnel play that they decided to run anyway with Luke McCaffrey, and KJ Osborne takes that, and then Crowder takes some of the route running, and man, Sennett in the long term, he's got to do better than he's done this year, but he is a rookie, and I think my eyes for Ben Sennett are much more long term at this point based off what he is right now.
You want to know my comp for Ben Sennett? He's a young Zach Ertz. If I look at Ertz the earlier years in Philly as he was kind of getting his feet under him, I think that's kind of who Sennett can be. He's never going to wow you with his speed, but I do think his size and his ability to use it and the hands, which we saw in camp and in the preseason, some are better than some. And I do think that most of the passing production from Ertz is going to be replaced by wide receivers, but you got to have somebody who can catch the ball at tight end. And I think Sennett has a chance here to have a decent little game against a Phillies group Eagles group that doesn't always do great against tight end.
We will see you on Sunday. Mitch, appreciate your time as always, my friend. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you at Northwest Stadium on Sunday for the showdown.
Looking forward to it, bud.
That is Mitch Tischler, everybody. And, of course, the Beltway Football Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and they do a live stream on the Monumental Sports app post-game, Mitchell and J.P. Finley. When we get back, Jaden Daniels Tape Tuesday via Take Command. Logan and I did something we've only done once before ever on the show, which was a very different circumstances a couple years ago. Remember that game where Carson Wentz got sacked 8 times against the Eagles? We went through every sack. It took us a lot longer than it did yesterday, but we went through every single sack from this game because they were illustrative of a lot of different things. And we're going to let you hear some of that breakdown next to give you an idea of just how well Jaden played, but also some of the areas where he could have elevated the offense even more. That's next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, our NFL tier rankings. Just how many teams stay in that top prime contenders tier. Do we send anyone else to actual hell? Certainly the teams that were there. I guess there's one team that won from actual hell. Do we pull them out of actual hell? All the fun of the NFL tiers coming up at 6 p.m. Right now, though, it's 5:30. It's on Tuesdays, which means as long as the Commanders played on Sunday, that we have a Jaden Daniels Take Command Tape Tuesday for you. Here's how today's podcast went, of which we are going to play a small snippet of. It wasn't your typical like Jaden film breakdown. What we actually did is we went through all the sacks. And we went through play-by-play. Hey, here's what happened. Here's why it's significant. Here's something that to look out for. Here's who's quote-unquote at fault. But also here's the litany of circumstances that explain it. We then provided some bigger context on the offense before doing a little bit on the defense at the end of the pod. So if you want all of that, check out Take Command wherever it is you get your podcasts. We're going to pick up the sack discussion kind of midway through because there's some really interesting sacks in the second half of this game that are more illustrative of the things that teams deal with this time of year as an offense, both individual player struggles, managing injuries within a game that I thought was more interesting than just hey, Jaden was good here or bad here. So without further ado, a Jaden Daniels Tape Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show.
It's time for a Take Command Tape Tuesday.
Jaden Daniels just lays it out there perfectly. What a throw.
On the Hoffman Show.
One more sack on that drive, 2 plays later, 3rd and 10 now in the second quarter. 1:48 to go. They're in empty. And this is the one where he like almost doesn't realize that the blitzer's coming.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird play. What happened here?
Yeah, this is tough. This is a really tough play, and this is a tough blitz. And this is, I think, certain times you got to give credit to New Orleans and what they do. And this is kind of like these new blitzes, these zone pressures that are being popularized by kind of that Baltimore tree with what's his name up in Seattle, the head coach up there?
Mike McDonald.
Mike McDonald.
Jesse Minter, the guy who's in L.A. now, like that crew.
Yeah, correct. And so you got all these guys up on the line of scrimmage. You don't really know who's dropping out. And what they're able to do is they're able to drop out 3 guys, one being a defensive lineman, 2 linebackers, and then they're rushing a defensive end now, a defensive tackle, and they're bringing 2 kind of nickel players off the offensive right. And so ideally, you have enough protectors there. But what they've done is they've made you call the protection like you normally would. So bigs on bigs, like we got good 4-man protection here. And then once they drop out, now the offensive line has to bump it across. And so a couple things that are happening here. One is usually a rule, kind of general rule of thumb for a chipper, and there's Jeremy McNichols on the right side, is you chip the widest rusher. So on this look, he chips the guy who he thinks is the widest rusher, which is like the nickel player, or the safety, excuse me. He chips the safety, and then the nickel comes off the perimeter. Why is that important? If I chip the nickel, now it allows Allegretti to see that the linebacker's dropping out. I can bump Dieter back, and then I can bump Cosby back, then I can bump Coleman back, and that extra little bit of time there would allow me to pick this up. So I think this is just a really well-designed blitz by New Orleans. The execution's excellent. And again, we had a little bit of a miscue. And again, this is a really hard look for McNichols here, so don't get me. This is not a criticism of him. Like, I've messed this up. I've messed this up before. Like, I know the coaching point because I've screwed it up, right? Like, that's the goal, is because if you chip the widest rusher, then you give time for everybody to bounce back across the formation. And I think the other thing that's tough about this and just important to acknowledge is that even if they were to identify it, Cosme loses to the inside really quickly, and it prevents the bump across even more. So I think this is a really well-disguised blitz. I think this is a really well-executed zone pressure. I understand why Jaden Daniels didn't see it. I understand why we didn't get picked up. And again, this is one of those ones you go to the sideline, you say, hey, man, in a perfect world, maybe you remike this or whatever. But I in watching it, I'm like, this is pretty clear as to this is a credit to New Orleans, and good job by them.
Yeah, if he could have somehow gotten the ball to OZ over the middle, great. But OZ also might have got his clock cleaned on that. Yep. Ideally, if McNichols chips the right guy, he might actually buy himself enough time to get a reception here. But none of that happens, and it's way before anything that Jaden can really do about it. All right, speaking of plays that didn't work based off how they were drawn up on the whiteboard, the 5th sack of the game is actually one of the most, I think, controversial play calls, if you will, of the game. And I think we should take a second to talk about this in general. It's the 3rd and 1 on the goal line. They've just had 2 successful carries, and for as bad as their run game was all day, we can talk about that more as well. They they decide to go with the play action boot here. Luke McCaffrey, Dan Quinn came out and was basically like, yeah, we would have loved that player to get more of a chip on the defensive end. Luke doesn't really get a piece of Cam Jordan at all. And I'll just say, I don't really love this play call considering those factors, considering those two dudes and who they are. Cam Jordan is a 11-year vet. I don't know. He's been in the NFL forever.
Yeah.
And he has seen this play a million times. Luke is probably typically not in on this. It's probably Noah Brown who's out. So knowing that, even though this has been one of the Commanders' best plays all year, if I'm Cliff, do I probably go somewhere else? Certainly with the benefit of hindsight, I do. I understand why they called it, but it's a really tough look. And again, obviously there's nothing Jaden or really any of the linemen can do about this. This comes down to Cam Jordan not being fooled and Luke McCaffrey not getting a big enough piece of it.
Yeah, and again, this is basically goal line personnel, and I've run this as the backside tight end on the wing here. And again, that's essentially what Luke is. And the whole reason this works is because you're going to basically sell a block. It's not even a chip. It's like a full-on block on Cam Jordan. Because once you get your man player's eyes into the backfield, you are now open. So he kind of goes in like he's going to chip. Like, you got to sell this. Like, it almost, like if I was coaching this, I'd be like, hey, Luke, I don't care if you got to cut this guy. Like, cut him down, because then the two players that have you kind of in approximately man-to-man coverage, they will lose you in coverage. You'll get up, you'll run to the back corner, Jaden will boot out. If he gets the perimeter, great, it's a touchdown. If not, he'll just nick it over to you. It's a really nice call. I like this a lot. This is in terms of short yardage play. Like, this is very high on my personal list of plays that I like. But again, to your point, like, you need to understand how absolutely critical it is that dude does not run up the field. It is the most imperative thing. Like, if he runs up the field, the play's dead no matter what. So, like, obviously here I am, what is this, 5 years after I'm done playing? Like, I still have, Vietnam level flashbacks of the importance of making sure that dude does not go up the field, right? You block that dude, you make him feel run, and then you go. This is not the correct technique. And so that's where it's so frustrating. To your point, is like, I'm sure that they installed this. I'm sure that they ran this with him. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. Because like you said, like, not only is this potentially a Noah Brown play, this also could have easily been a Zach Ertz play.
Yeah, I was going to say, the other thing too is Ertz is out at this point, and so if they typically run this out of 13 personnel, then instead of it being Luke, who's got he has a tough angle to try to get down to Cam Jordan. And that's
where
Jordan.
Again, like, tighten your split, man. Get in, get in there. The most important thing is that he does not get off the field. Right. So go ahead. Yeah.
So if that's a tight end, then that split's probably going to be more comfortable being tighter. Zach probably knows that. If it's Noah, like, he is a veteran, he probably knows that. Instead, it's Luke, who's a rookie, who's like, how close do I get on this? And actually, then it looks like he's lost by alignment.
Sorry to cut you off, Craig, but this is actually 14 personnel. This would be 14 because Trent Scott's in.
Yes.
So this would be like their heavy 13 or heavy 14, however you want to look at that. And again, so the more I look at this, the more I'm like, this probably is a Zach thing. And he would probably be in a tight 2-point. He's probably going to bang down hard on this end, make him feel run, make him feel cut off. Both those guys are going to lose him, and then you would just work to the back pylon, and you'd probably be open for a touchdown. But this is, again, where, like, the play call to me is right. It's the execution that falls short, and for all the reasons we just talked about, like, is this Luke's fault? Technically, yes, but also, like, did he get reps at it? Has he prepared this? I don't know. We don't know. But I like the call. I don't like the execution, but you could say that about pretty much every call over the course of a game.
Sure. And I think that's actually a good point. We'll get to these last two sacks in a second, but, like, I think it's actually a good point to make overall about this game is I think that this was one of their worst detail games of the season. And there's a great example, actually their first drive, which ends in a touchdown that Terry just magically creates and Jaden magically creates. But, like, on that sequence, there is touchdown wiped off because he leaves early, and so it's the illegal shift. On the very next play, they are incredibly lucky that it's not a fumble or that B-Rob or McNichols, whoever it was, recovered that fumble because Jaden, for some reason, is like, I'm close to the goal line. I'm on top of people. Whistle hasn't blown. Let me see if I can reach the ball out. And it's like that level of detail of like, hey, let's just protect the football, live. Like, that's the kind of stuff that they preach all the time. And then Cosme has a hold on the very next play, and then somehow the play after that's a touchdown. So it works out, but, like, talk about lack of attention to detail in this game on some of this stuff that just, there's the read or the arc option where B-Rob's out in front as a blocker, and he just reaches out and grabs a dude. And you're like, we don't need that holding penalty there. Like, that's a killer. So there's things like that throughout this game, and I don't know whether it's coming off the bye, because it's kind of similar when they played Dallas, and they were really bizarrely out of sync and out of whack coming off a long rest there. Like, I don't know what that was all about, but that is not who they've been most of the year, and it's clearly not who they can be and possibly win against a team like Philadelphia.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I'm not sure why it is. You know, they did do some different stuff in terms of running the football from formations and motions, and they had some really cool stuff off of it. They had a leak route off of one that ended up getting covered, but really liked the play design. They had the touchdown OZ, which was called back. Like, cool stuff off that kind of jet motion, bringing a sifter back, bringing a flat guy back. Like, again, we've said this before, but when I'm going to just reiterate the point is that sometimes when you're on a little bit of you've put more in, you can't own it the way you want to own it. And I do think that pops up a little bit here. Because again, you not only are you putting in new plays, but now Noah Brown's out, and maybe he was the one who got all the reps at it. And now you're getting Oz some reps, Diami some reps, and you're kind of rotating through to see who's going to fit in.
And your center's out, which was unexpected.
Yeah, and I think that showed up a lot in this game too, and we'll talk about that more with the offensive line, just in terms of cadence and things like that. So, yes, there was a lot of things in this game that felt a little loose detail-wise, and it makes sense. You probably put a little bit more in the bye because you're excited about it. They're good plays, and they are good plays. But you get new people and new roles. The center's hurt, like he's sick, and it ends up being just a little bit off in terms of detail, and I think that showed up pretty extensively.
All right, let's quickly knock out these last two sacks. 2nd and 14, 1:22 to go in the third quarter. They got 3 wide receivers to the right, 2 to the left. OZ runs, I think is that a choice route? Is that
looks like a choice route to me.
Texas route? It winds up running like a little angle route. And he wins, and Jaden's staring right at him, and he just doesn't throw it. And again, offensive line takes some pressure here. Unfortunately, if he reads the other side of the field, Diami Brown is wide open for a touchdown on that corner route. But like, it's fine. You chose the left side for whatever reason. You got to get dude open. I don't know why he doesn't throw it. And then he takes a sack.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one that's probably most obvious to me in terms of like being on him. And you have to talk to him like, hey, why didn't you throw it? It's open.
Yeah.
Let it rip.
Like that happens to quarterbacks in every single game.
Yeah,
I don't know why it happens, but it does.
And it's weird because like I think the first thing I watched from the passing game was the sacks, and I was like, man, like what's going on? Like he missed the check down, the subtle step up check down to B-Rob, he misses this one. I'm like, man, did Jaden not play that well? And then you go back and watch the totality of all the dropbacks, you're like, dude, there's like probably 5 where he elevates past, he sits in versus a muddy pocket and delivers a great throw. So like this is, again, I would just have to say this, it's not a criticism of him. These are some of his like quote unquote bad plays from this game. But for every one of these, there's probably 2 or 3 excellent elevations of the offense. And so again, like, should he make this throw? Yeah. But like when you watch even the best quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, they have plays where you're like, why didn't you throw that? Like, why did you take this sack, or why did you do whatever? And that happens. And this to me feels like one of those plays. Yeah.
And it also just, again, the pocket movement thing. He has room to step up a little bit here. It's like a subtle step up, and maybe you find something. Instead, he tries to escape the pocket out of the back, and that's where Chase Young is. So, not a great rep from Coleman, but he does wash him high enough that if Jaden doesn't step back into it, it's probably not a sack. And then the last one, 3rd and 4, 9:04 to go. This one, Andrew Wiley takes on some pressure. Coverage does a good job. Also, coverage does a good job / gets bailed out by the fact that Olamide Zaccheaus is tackled in the middle of the field, and this should be an illegal contact and an automatic first down. And instead, Jaden has nowhere to go with the football and winds up getting sacked.
Yeah, this is bad. This is a bad no call. And I'm not a criticize the refs type of guy, but this is a bad call because like it looks like to me like they're running some type of sail concept. So he's going to inside release and then kind of bend out around this guy. And by all accounts, just looking at this, like he would have absolutely killed this guy. So this to me feels like Jaden's waiting for that to clear. Dude gets tackled, and it's like, oh, shoot, I'm going to panic a little bit, which makes sense because I do think he's just going to loop right around this defender, and this could be a touchdown potentially. So maybe they thought that they got their feet tangled up, whatever the officials thought. To me, this is on this illegal contact in terms of making this an impossible play for Jaden to make. And again, it spooks him. Maybe he could get to the check down. I understand if that's his primary read, it's man coverage. You're working your best matchup, and that dude just gets tackled to the ground. And again, like, I don't think I'm being harsh here in describing it as a tackle, Craig. Like,
no,
that's what it looks like, right?
He literally wraps his arms around him and tackles him. And to your point, if it's man coverage and your guy goes down and you see a little bit of space and you're Jaden Daniels, like, they're Nate, we can convert that. Like, let's take off. Let's run. Like, I actually don't really have a huge problem with that. And, like, you know, Wiley, I think this is also a good example of kind of how offensive line play lives in shades of gray. Like, there is a chip here from Sinnott, and then basically the Saints DN gets a running head start and just rams into Wiley. And Wiley gets knocked back like 4 or 5 yards, but then he anchors from there. And if Jaden can, you know, just step up in the pocket a little bit, maybe someone else comes open. But again, I also understand why he did what he did. It's a little bit of win by the coverage with the assist from the ref. It's a little bit of a loss by Wiley. It's made into a sack ultimately by Jaden / a good play by the Saints. But I don't necessarily like hate the process. Sometimes you do a good process and the other team makes a play. That's football.
Yeah, this is one where it kind of, again, like, and this is not a criticism of him, but you know, the guy falls down, his receiver falls down, gets tackled, whatever you want to call it, and then I think it spooks him, because I do think Wiley, I think, settles this. You know, I watch a lot of offense. I think he settles this. I think it's there. The problem is, like, where do you go with the ball then? Because you got to flat to that side, and you're really relying on that as your man-beating concept to the side. So, again, like, this to me should be a non-issue because of the DPI, but it happens. And again, he ends up taking a sack, probably doesn't have to. But again, I'm not sure what the next step would be other than to try to hit Sinnott crossing the formation late just to get the ball out. And maybe that's what the coaching point would be there.
Yeah, but there is a little bit of a lane that's just closed down quickly. That's the nature of the NFL. Space disappears fast, and that's something that I think, you know, he's been incredible, and he might be a 1,000-yard rusher this year. But when he learns just where the spaces really are, like that next level Lamar supernatural feel that takes a couple years to develop because it's the NFL, that's where he just takes off to a completely different level.
Yep.
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, it's our NFL tier rankings. Anthony, I just had a horrifying realization in the break.
You want to expound upon it?
That'd be really weird if I didn't know. I was just like, I had a horrifying realization. All of you are going to be left wondering. It has to do with the Commanders game that just got flexed on Sunday night, or 2 Sunday Night Football in 2 weeks. And it kind of happened to me because I was reaching out to, I forgot to CC you on this email, my bad. I was reaching out to NBC to see if we could get Mike or Chris, Tarico Collinsworth, one of their studio people, whoever, on the show in the week. And typically Wednesdays is a really good day for us to tape. I don't have Take Command that day. Sometimes we have those folks on Friday after they get done with their production meetings, and that's great. But then I was like, oh, Wednesday's probably not going to work because that's Christmas. Anthony, the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, how's that for a travel day around the DMV?
That's brutal.
How you think the Beltway is going to be for Sunday Night Football?
Oh, my gosh. Why do you have to make me think about that?
I mean, you're planning on going, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Not thinking about it is probably worse because we're gonna have to deal with it. Look, I don't want to be negative Nelly about this. I don't want to have to harp on the fact that I hate that I'm going to be up until 2 in the morning after the post-game locker room. I don't want to harp on the fact that the Beltway is going to be a disaster getting to the game. What I do want to do is spin this positively. We get Sunday Night Football. That's going to be sick. I want Commanders fans to show up and show out in a major way. Make that the best crowd that Northwest Stadium / FedEx Field has seen since RG3 in 2012. That's what I want. And in order to do that and for everyone to be happy, disperse yourselves throughout the day. Commanders, as an organization, let's open the lots a little bit early. Let's let people go and party. In fact, Anthony, I think I might vlog that day.
Oh, wow. Are you going to start early?
Well, that's what I was thinking. What if we took me, you, and the vlog camera around to some different tailgates? Like, what if in order to avoid traffic ourselves, we walked around and watched a little football with some folks, threw some footballs around, ate some chicken wings? What if you lost Competition Wednesday next week and had to eat hot wings, and we made that hot wings happen at a tailgate? Okay, what if it's me? We could do Competition Wednesday at a tailgate, hot wing style.
I'm not going to lie, Craig. I think I'm down for it.
Yeah.
I won't have anything to
it's
do
a
on
wheel
Sunday.
of mediocre punishment. Everyone that's just all of a sudden fired up their Da Bomb hot sauce, you freaking relax over there. We don't need that. We don't need to hallucinate before the game. But I think we're going to try to spin this. One, we've given people the what for heads up. Hey, the Beltway is going to be a nightmare because you got a bunch of people coming home from Christmas weekend, and that's going to be some serious traffic. So you've been forewarned. But also, maybe Anthony and I, for an 8 o'clock start, we'll get there sometime around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you can tell us where you're tailgating, and we'll bop on over to wherever you are, and we can have some Hoffman Show tailgates. Because it's something I've wanted to do all year, and I haven't really done it. When I say haven't really, I haven't done it at all. There's been a couple times I've walked through parking lots and just thought about going up to people and been like, hey, do you know who I am is a pretentious question, but it's far less pretentious at a football game where I spend my livelihood, my whole life, talking about the team. There's a higher percentage of people at a Commanders game that actually know who I am compared to any other place I could go on the entire planet outside of my own family reunion. So maybe, Anthony, me, you, and the vlog camera can make that a fun day.
I think that sounds great. I'm down.
Okay.
I'm down. We got to make sure we get a hot dog as well, though. I love a glizzy.
Yeah, I love a hot dog. I love some chicken wings. I'm happy to try any other food.
You eating coon?
I'm not eating.
I just had to ask.
The raccoon, I kill it, I skin it,
I hunt it.
I hunt it. Where do you get? I hunt it, I kill it, I skin it. When's the last time you had one? Thanksgiving. Have we been keeping a Real Things Hall of Fame folder for the year?
We have not.
We did at one point. I would like you to add that one to it.
Okay.
And if there's any other ones that in recent memory come back that you want to add to it, I would say that's probably a good idea before we get even farther behind. But yeah, honey, I can't. No raccoon. But if you got chicken wings, if you got a gumbo, if you got a hot dog, and I can't have dairy, but that's a personal thing. So your nachos and stuff, unless they're lactose free, I'm gonna be out on. But that's not because I don't have respect for your nachos. It's because I have respect for my lack of ability to process lactose. That's a couple weeks from now. Will the Falcons still be alive by then? Where are they now in our NFL tiers? Will the Commanders be able to clinch by then? Where are they in our NFL tiers? Our NFL tier rankings are next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We were scheduled here to do our NFL tiers, and we're going to do those at 6:15. But we had an open segment at 6:30 that I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with, and so we have room to bump back and welcome in Linnell Willingham, who, based off how he just entered this room, very clearly needs a session of football therapy. If you're new to the show, this is something we did with Linnell last year. Linnell, as you know, very passionate, doesn't know what to do with his takes, just winds up blurting them all out into microphones, and then 2 weeks later being like, I don't know why I said that, or I was right. But he always just has the takes, and so instead of that, we just let him talk through it with me, his football therapist.
I like to do this.
Linnell, welcome back to the couch.
Hello, Craig. Anthony, I will have my copay ready for you on the way out, as he is the front desk receptionist here at the Hoffman Football Clinic. But no, I don't know.
Linnell's an adult now. He knows about copays.
Come on now.
All right.
Hashtag 27.
Okay, youngest in charge. What you got?
But no, I just am at a spot right now where I don't know what to think about where we currently stand. And I get so angry. My number one thing that I'm met with is, oh, Linnell, you got to look at it big picture context. We're in year one of a rebuild, and you've got your franchise quarterback. I get that, but that's not as fun, right? Like, all that's going to be fine in the case, no matter if they win a playoff game, miss the playoffs, whatever. That will be set in stone. The organizational structure is there. My concern, and how dare I look ahead to the future, my concern, I don't even want to say concern, my question is, are they good enough to win a playoff game? And the other question I now have, based off the way Sunday looked, are they good enough to make the playoffs? Because their playoff making scenario is very interesting, right? They can lose.
Yeah, let me really therapize you here for a second. Let me do the thing that therapists really do, which is kind of get to the underlying core of the issue, right? What if they're not?
What if they're not? Then it's fine. And it is what it is.
Okay. Then what are we angry about?
It's not that I'm angry. I'm more so just, I'll give you a secret.
I think you said that you were angry.
I'll tell you a secret.
Okay. Just me and you here. No one else listening.
No one else is listening. HIPAA.
Wow, that's two adult jokes for not adult. You never just keep it moving.
But I feel like I get met with such backlash when I choose to be objective about the team. And when I say objective, I mean I have no issues praising them. I also have no issues pointing out some of their most critical, glaring flaws. And it feels like whenever I bring up the flaws, the fan base's response is, "Oh, shut up, you biased man. You're just a hater of the team. We're in year one of the rebuild." And I'm like, with my objective stance, never did I ignore the fact that we're in year one of a rebuild. Never did I ignore the fact that we have a franchise quarterback. Never did I ignore the fact that we have the proper organizational structure for the first time in my life. I have to look at it for what it is right now. And as we sit here, what is this about to be, week 16 of 2024, I don't know who we are right now. I told the world they broke my trust with the loss at home against Dallas. They almost broke my trust again this weekend. If they would have lost to New Orleans, I can give a damn about the clock malfunction, the bad penalties. It shouldn't have been that close of a football game, in my opinion. And obviously you have the injury to Biotish that kind of severely impacted the way you ran the football.
It did.
If you listen to the pregame show, I tried to tell everyone about the local product. Brian
let's not get too far away from the core point here.
Yes, the core point.
Which is that when you bring up flaws in the current team, people get mad at you.
Yes, so I don't know why.
Well, and
it makes me mad in return, because my mentions is full of nothing but negativity. I called out Dan Quinn. I was I was perplexed by his decision.
Called out Dan Quinn for which decision?
The decision to kick a 54-yard field goal after your defense had given up three straight scoring possessions.
Did perhaps your presentation of said information, you think, impact the response? Did you think perhaps how at times you leave no wiggle room for potential alternatives could have a result in the vitriol coming back at you? Has that crossed your mind, youngest in charge movement leader?
It has crossed my mind, and I
have
appreciate
you perhaps allowed that to impact how you present information in the future?
No.
I think we've got to the core of the problem here.
I'm not going to change, is what the people need to understand.
Liddell, you know you.
I know me very well.
Which is that I think at times you present things that are perhaps more negotiable, perhaps not quite as black and white as black and white. And not only is it black and white, but you're an absolute moron if you disagree. Which is why you and Russell scream at each other between 1 and 4 twice a week at absolute ad nauseum, because you both actually operate that way, which is hilarious because often you are on the opposite sides of arguments where you think if the other person takes the opposite side that they are the dumbest person walking the face of the earth, and thus you look at each other as if the other one is the dumbest person walking on the face of the earth.
Very well said.
So, the thing is, though, if both of you who do a lot of work and pay attention and have been covering this league, in Chris's case, been covering the NFL for a long, long time. In your case, has been covering it very intensely for a shorter amount of time, hence the youngest in charge. And you guys can come to different conclusions, like perhaps there is room here. For instance, the 54-yard field goal, I think, was a questionable decision. I can't vehemently disagree with the idea of a guy who can kick a 54-yard field goal, kicking it to go up 10.
Yes.
And so that is a relevant plot point here. I think by the same token, like, you can't both acknowledge that if they don't wind up making the playoffs, or if they're not good enough to win a playoff games, because it is year one, that then everyone has failed, everything sucks, and the whole world is on fire. But
I've never even alluded to it.
I do think perhaps your presentation at times makes it seem like the world is ending, and that anyone who is not 5-alarm firing is that dog in that emoji who's sitting there with the fire behind him going, this is fine.
Yeah.
When in reality, like, that's a dog sitting in front of a presentation of a fire that's like being projected onto the wall. Nothing's actually on fire because it is year one of a rebuild. And so, like, I think both, and to be totally transparent with you, because we haven't talked about this yet, but I've talked about it on the show. I don't know what to do with Sunday's game. Because if you go play-by-play through it, the offensive notes, like, the offense is pretty good. They didn't go 3 and out the entire day. Defense, all in all, pretty good. And the drives where they weren't, they had some really bad breaks / one incredibly stupid penalty by Benjamin St. Juste. So I think, like, trying to make sense of Sunday's game is very difficult. But at the end of the day, sometimes in seasons, you have to survive like that. The Chiefs are 13-1 and like, aren't that good. But you find ways to win. And I think that there's power in that too. And then you hope that you can eventually figure it out and play your best when it matters the most. The Chiefs have mastered that. They're 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. I do not anticipate the Commanders upending their reign. But some of this too is like, once you get better players, these near interceptions become interceptions. These near misses on offense or these missed assignments on blocks become better when insert offensive lineman who's an average to below average NFL starter becomes an above average NFL starter. That is just the reality of the talent level on this roster. And so you have to just eventually go, hey, yes, you would like to see better, but I understand why it's not better, and that will help you sleep better at night.
Productive therapy session, I would call it. I think what you said at the end is like what I always keep in the front of my mind, despite me not saying it as often. The reason for their problems, a majority of them, is a talent thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine, but I have to ask the question still. Like, it doesn't mean I shouldn't ask, because the one thing that I continue to believe will ultimately be their undoing and their biggest flaw, and I've said it to you countless times throughout the season, I just don't think they can stop the run when it matters against teams that are going to say, hey, we're running it. And that's okay. But I don't know if that is a personnel issue, because the personnel up front is, like, pretty decent. Like,
and is it like Carl Davis is playing from the practice squad? Like Sheldon Day, they found on the street this year.
Your depth needs to improve.
Those aren't depth. Those are like part of the rotation. Those guys play like 35% of the snaps. Like that, they are not Seattle Dan Quinn deep. Like, on the D-line.
Not at all.
And they also don't have any stars. Like, there's no... It's one thing if you're playing those guys. And, like, to be fair to those two, like, Carl Davis didn't have a great game on Sunday, but, like, Sheldon Day's been excellent, especially by Sheldon Day standards. Like, he's been a hell of a find by this pro scouting department, and credit to Dan and the other folks that had been with him previously and knew he was available. But it's also different if, like, Myles Garrett can make you 5 plays a game on the edge. They don't have that dude either. And so I think that like all of this is relevant information. They're also not built to play from behind. Like that's not stylistically how they want to be, and that's a conscious choice. And in the NFL, you just can't do everything. It's too hard to be great at everything. And if you are for one magical season, dudes are then going to want to get paid, and you're not going to be able to sustain it for more than like 2. Now, if you're the Chiefs and the thing that powers that is your quarterback, then somehow you can wind up 13-1 and he just finds ways to win even though he's not even having a good year. When you're not that good. But this is life in the NFL. It's hard. And I think the discourse around the NFL would be so much better in general on all these silly shows that you and I are a part of and we watch on television and on down the list if more people started their conversations with, this is the NFL. It's really hard. Okay, let's discuss it. Because it level sets how difficult it is when all of the best players and all of the best coaches in the world are constantly doing battle through a litany of rain, wind, injury, and other factors that are beyond their control.
And ironically enough, despite my lack of faith in them to win a postseason game, I think the team, and I've tossed back and forth on this, I think the team that they'll have the best shot to beat is if they get matched up with Philadelphia, because I look at it from the standpoint of, okay, when you're playing a team for the third time, I think the emphasis on the coaching staff and the adjustments ratchet up, and I like our guys versus their guys on the coaching staff.
I don't disagree with that.
Still don't think they'll probably win because I think the talent discrepancy is just
they got dudes who can make plays.
Huge.
Like at the end of the day, like Jaden this year versus zone coverage, fantastic. Jaden this year versus man-to-man, not great. He was awesome against man-to-man at LSU. Why? Because he had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas.
Man beaters.
This year, you can pick your matchup. Don't like it against a lot of teams with this receiving core.
So let me go and say this too. Then would I be considered a hater? I can't be considered a hater. I've gone through crazy things to watch these games before through my childhood that I've shared on Windbag Wednesday and Throwdown Thursday. But I wake up today. I'm geeked up that the Atlanta game's in primetime. Not really. It screws us all over as media members, and I hate it.
Yeah, that's personal. I get.
But
you and I are on the same page there.
I do like it.
Yes.
But I look at the way Washington played Sunday versus New Orleans, and I look at what Atlanta has, and I go, are they gonna beat Atlanta?
I mean,
if they missed the postseason, would it be considered a disappointment?
Was it Tennessee beat someone the week before they played the Commanders, and then the Commanders just absolutely dump trucked them? Like the league, it's a week-to-week league.
Not about.
Here's how we're going to close the therapy session because we are running out of time.
Well,
in a shocking turn of events, Linnell has run us long. It's a week-to-week league. That's the league. It's hard. Remember, repeat after me. Here's your affirmation to close football therapy. The NFL is hard.
The NFL is hard.
Things change.
Things change.
Predicting things will make you look foolish.
Predicting things will make you look foolish, but I'll continue to do so for the clicks.
Don't say for the clicks.
Just a joke.
No, it's not.
Craig, thank you as always.
We'll work on Linnell click harvesting next week.
Click harvesting is great.
Hoffman show. Linnell is going to go over there, and he's going to go and do overtime. I presume that's why you're here.
Yes,
I don't think you've showed up a day early for Windbag Wednesday.
No.
I know that show takes some preparation, mentally and otherwise.
Well, for sure.
But Linnell's got overtime over on 106.7 The Fan.
Thank you, my friend.
Tonight. Thanks for stopping in, buddy. When we get back, it'll be our NFL tier rankings. But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports presented by Wawa. Chicken how you want it at Wawa with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, and it is time for our NFL tier rankings week 16 edition. I cannot believe, Anthony, it is week 16 in the NFL. We're going to hit our prime contenders first, and I think that it's not going to take very long because I don't really feel like there was a lot of movement at the top of the charts this week, but alas, let's run through it. As a reminder, we have 5 tiers. We started the year with 4, and we've added one, which we call Actual Hell, for the absolute worst teams in the league. But we start off at the other end of the spectrum with our prime contenders before getting to Puncher's Chance, interesting but not quite good enough, and then no chance in heck. The Kansas City Chiefs, by hook or by crook, they continue to be in. We almost created another tier on top of prime contenders just called blessed and highly favored and put the Chiefs there. And lo and behold, Anthony, that's exactly what they did again. Didn't really play that well, but Jameis Winston blessed them with 4 interceptions. And the only bad thing is, well, it's pretty bad, and that is that Patrick Mahomes might miss this weekend because his ankle's hurt.
Well, at least they were able also to win a game by more than one score, man. All season long, we've gotten on them about, just them always winning these one-score games. But, yeah, when Jameis Winston throws you 4 interceptions, I would hope you win that game.
Yeah, and they sure did. And then we get to watch about it on Hard Knocks. Speaking of Hard Knocks, the Ravens are also there. They beat the ever-loving crap out of the Giants. Congrats, you stay. Lions, Bills, they played each other. And they played each other in one of the games of the year. They both stay. Steelers and Eagles played each other. Eagles won fairly definitively. The Steelers basically didn't touch the ball in the fourth quarter. Just an unbelievable drive by Philly to close this thing out. I think Pittsburgh gets an asterisk, Anthony. And I don't want to move them down until I see them do something or have a performance like this against either another team that's worse or if George Pickens' injury lingers. Because without Pickens, this offense doesn't have much of a chance, especially against the best in the league. And that's what we saw on Sunday. It was exactly what we thought, but because it's injury-related, a team that throws a bunch of deep balls without their best deep ball guy, a team that relies on vertically stretching the field without the guy who does that for them, I don't think that actually, who they are as a team, my opinion on them hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, George Pickens is definitely a huge reason, their offense has been successful. But I think this team has leaned on their defense all year long. And Philly, even though they didn't have, the best or the success on the ground, that pass defense was getting carved up a little bit, man. You playing all that man defense. So I think Philly I think Pittsburgh just has to figure out the defensive thing as far as their passing game goes, just as Baltimore had to do early in the season. And I'm not going to say they figured it out, but it's better.
I trust Mike Tomlin to figure it out. I also think that playing man against the Eagles is particularly challenging because they have the best receiver duo arguably in the entire league.
Yep.
It's not going to happen against other teams. Now, TJ Watt misses time again late in the season. That's problematic. But Steelers, they get an asterisk, but they're not going anywhere as of yet. Eagles obviously stay. Packers, they won. They stay. Vikings, they won definitively last night over a Bears team. By the way, that game was on replay earlier up on the TV here in the studio. I didn't watch it last night. Every single time I looked up and the Bears had the ball, Caleb was running for his life and then making one of the sickest throws I've ever seen to a receiver who dropped it. Was that how the game actually went? And also, I don't know how much of that is on Caleb. He just runs around like a maniac and he should be just getting the ball out quickly. But it's one of those where you're just man, can that dude get some help? And then he does something physically impossible, the greatest horse shot you've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. It's a mix of him holding onto the ball long and then also, the receivers dropping pass. Keenan, I think, had 2 drops. DJ Moore, he's had drops this season. It's dang, if he's going to really go out there and sacrifice his body, help him.
Also, quit sacrificing your body so much. You got to find some easy completions, bro. This is the NFL. It is going to be hard. Okay, that's the prime contender tier. When we get back, we will knock out the rest of the Puncher's Chance category. I don't think anybody necessarily needs to come up. Does everybody in Puncher's Chance get to stay? And is there anybody interesting but not quite good enough that deserves a call-up? And then we'll take care of Poops Town as well. Our tier rankings as we continue through on a Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We got our NFL tier rankings for you. We've gone through the prime contenders. There were no movement from last week's edition of the show, where we had the Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Steelers, Eagles, and Packers, as well as the Vikings in the top tier. All right, puncher's chance, Anthony. Washington Commanders. I still think they're exactly who they've been all along. A team that, by the way, if they can just hit a couple of big plays down the field, will drop 30 on you. A team that defensively largely is playing well, but can't get out of its own way in key situations. If they can avoid key situations, and none of that matters, which goes back to the offense. And that's kind of the ultimate puncher's chance. They are a team that has a big haymaker, and you just got to hope they don't land it on you.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it, throughout the season where we have games, like you just mentioned, where we go out there and lay 40 on you. We've had 3 40-point games this year, or has it been 4?
It's
Panthers,
Panthers, Titans, I think are the only two, but they've had like 38 and a couple of others.
That's probably what it is then. But we know
Cincinnati,
we're more than
amongst others. Yeah.
Yeah, we know we're more than capable of, keeping up with some of these teams. It's more so we just got to string together stops, man. Good gracious.
Yeah, which involves not committing stupid penalties. And you know what? I something that I haven't had a chance to point out at all today throughout our discourse of this. Like, this team did make an adjustment in this game. Like, Jeremy Chin came on, and this is so, like, minutia, but, I mean, it also matters a ton. There's a play late in the game that Chin comes on a blitz, and he's not going to get there. And I think in a different game, Chin blasts Spencer Rattler. He's just there enough that he probably could have gotten away with hitting him. And instead, after Fowler's been called for 2 roughing penalties that are questionable at best, wrong if you ask me, Chin is also really careful with how he jumps, but kind of waves his hands in Rattler's face. Rattler throws the ball away, and instead of getting a roughing penalty, either by a silly hands to the face or a late hit, he avoids it. And that's a smart play by Jeremy Chin. Would, from a play style standpoint and a make the quarterback think about it standpoint, I'd rather Jeremy Chin absolutely drive his shoulder pads through the middle of Spencer Rattler's chest. Yep, that's football. Not dirty, it's just the way it goes. Sucks to be you sometimes as an NFL quarterback. But he didn't, because he didn't want to pick up a dumb penalty. And so it's in there somewhere, the right amount of the aggression meter, the right amount of the make plays meter. But that's something that hopefully they can continue to find the right balance of. But it also changes week to week because officials change week to week. Sean Hochuley's crew is notoriously tic-tac. And boy, were they on Sunday. Okay, Commanders, puncher's chance. Chargers got worked by the Buccaneers. They are the team that I'm most considering, I think, moving down. Because they have just not been the same since J.K. Dobbins was out. I'm putting a star by them.
Yeah, and the defense, too. Some question for concern.
Yeah, to say the least. Okay, Broncos, they showed their mettle. Seahawks, I'm willing to see if Geno can stay. They got to go compete with Green Bay this weekend. If they get their doors blown off by Green Bay, we're out of here on the Seahawks.
Yeah, if Geno doesn't play, do we just automatically?
Well, if Geno doesn't play the way that Sam Howell played, they're in actual hell. Sam, man, holy crap. That was horrendous.
Yeah, real bad.
Rams, ultimate puncher's chance, as discussed. They had a wacky game in the rain, but they won. And the Bucs, well, they have about as big a haymaker as the Commanders do. They put up 40 on what was previously the best scoring defense in the league. So I think they are correctly situated in puncher's chance. They are not better, but they are certainly not worse. Okay, interesting but not quite good enough. The Houston Texans. If we are talking about just their defense, they are in puncher's chance. But their offense, and I know it's but they have C.J. Stroud. They've got one of the best quarterbacks. They are in some ways a really, classic puncher's chance team. If C.J. just goes out and has a day with Nico Collins, the way their defense plays, but their offense is bad. C.J.'s not going to have some massive day. He can save them from being heinous, but offensively, they're a mess, and they continue to be a mess. So they're right where they're supposed to be. They're interesting, but they're not good enough.
Yeah, I would agree. They did clinch their division as well, so whether or not we like it, I think they have to be in puncher's chance. Just because they're in the playoffs.
All right, fine.
Is that fair?
No, you're correct. By definition, the way we set this up is also how do we feel, but also from a kind of a definitional standpoint. Puncher's chance is you're in the playoffs and you wouldn't be surprised to win a playoff game. And depending on the matchup, if they're going to be at home, I'm going to put Houston Texans. I've never made a note like this before in this document. Reluctantly, because they won a poop division.
Yeah, it's like the Commanders from 2020.
Fine. You congratulations, Houston Texans. You're in puncher's chance. Whee! Falcons. Interesting, but not good enough. They're just not. They're not. They're kind of interesting still, but they're not good enough. Indianapolis Colts. Are they even interesting anymore?
No.
I'm so sorry. Indianapolis Colts. I think also by definition, when you get eliminated from the playoffs, they still have a chance, but it's very slim. when you get eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you want to cut that and send it to Z and this becomes a cold takes, then I'll take a small part of his playoff bonus.
All right, I got you.
Cincinnati. They're still interesting offensively, and they also can wreck some other teams, including some teams that I think we're talking about here, kind of in this range. But Cincinnati's interesting. Miami, I don't even know if they're interesting anymore. I think I'm ready to move the Dolphins. They did lose.
Ooh, yeah. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, I think we're out on you.
Yeah. Get to stepping.
Goodbye. Arizona Cardinals. If anything, they would move up, not down, but I kind of think they're where they belong.
Yeah, I agree.
I need to see more consistency out of you. There's a chance they wind up back up if they have another good game, but they just had too many stinkers. The Panthers. All you had to do is be competitive. And you at least qualified for interesting because Bryce Young and, like, what's the future? I just think it's time. With 3 weeks to go, goodbye. You're down. And
they had a nice run, though, Craig.
They did. Congratulations to Carolina for being interesting for many more weeks than we thought you were going to be. Yeah, they were favored, and that was clearly a mistake. San Francisco 49ers. Are they interesting anymore? No. I guess technically they're still alive, so we're going to keep them there.
They're still alive, but they're not interesting.
Yeah, well, I think they're interesting. All right, no chance. Raiders. The Raiders, I guess they have a quarterback change coming. Wait, Aiden O'Connell played last night, didn't he? Are the Raiders in actual hell? I think we now define as actual hell. We're gonna change up the definition. Are you firing your coach?
Nice.
Are the Raiders in actual hell? Are they firing Antonio Pierce?
They're firing him.
You think so? They hired him last year.
Yeah, but I think this also goes back to
honestly,
they might people don't hire the interim.
Yeah. I think they're in actual hell because they're not going to fire Antonio Pierce. Jacksonville Jaguars. Mac Jones is their starting quarterback. They're going down.
Yeah.
They're going down. Somehow what we're going to do is we're just moving the target on Carolina.
And they lost to the Jets, though, Craig, so they have to go.
The New England Patriots.
I don't think they're in actual hell.
I think they're in no chance. I think they can stay there. The Saints.
The Saints.
You know what? I'm going to keep the Saints out of hell. They probably belong there, but that team plays hard, man.
Yeah.
Watching, I have not seen a lot of teams like out physical the Commanders this year. Like the list is very small, and it's like the Ravens, the Steelers, the Saints absolutely blasted the Commanders on some plays this weekend. They did a really good job at the line of scrimmage. There was a play, in my notes, the way I wrote it, Ant, was Cam Jordan sunned John Bates. John Bates doesn't get sunned.
I know exactly what play you're talking about.
There's another play where Quan Martin, who also doesn't get sunned. Quan Martin suns people. He just will take a wide receiver and be like, you, sir, are dead now. You're going to run block me? Get the out of here. MVS escorts Quan Martin out the club. Like, goodbye.
Out the club is hilarious.
I was like, yo, where's Quan Martin going? What are we doing? Holy crap. Good job, MVS. And that was like late in that game. So, Saints, you earn my respect. You're not any good, but you earn my respect. Cowboys. They won. They get to stay. The Browns are in actual hell.
Yeah, they got to get the step in real quick.
How many 4 interception games are you gonna have, Jameis? Jesus Christ. Chicago Bears.
Ryan Poles, man.
They've already fired their coach. They're in actual hell.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other teams we just moved down, the Colts, the Dolphins. I think that's fine. Like Panthers, Patriots, Saints, Cowboys, Colts, fine. And then the Jets, the founding author of actual hell, are they staying down there?
Yeah, they're staying.
Even though they won? Okay.
They played the Jags.
Congratulations. Giants, the Titans. Will Levis had a QBR of 1.1. And then the Raiders, Jags, Browns, and Bears. Okay. That's it. Those are the tiers. Does this feel right? One group is the Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Steelers, Eagles, Packers, Vikings. I think it feels right.
I think it's fantastic.
Next group, Commanders, Chargers, Broncos, Seahawks, Rams, Bucks, Texans.
Looks good.
Texans. What are you doing there? Falcons, Bengals, Cardinals, Niners. That actually is that makes me feel so much better about that tier.
Yeah. Yeah, it does actually.
those 4 teams were meant to be
Because
together.
it doesn't make sense, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like, you're just not good enough, but you should be. And then no chance. Panthers, Patriots, Saints, Cowboys, Colts, Dolphins. It's kind of a potpourri. And then the Jets, Giants, Titans, Raiders, Jags, Browns, and Bears.
Yeah, some bad culture down there.
Yeah. All right. I think we actually nailed that. I feel very proud of our work this week.
Yes, sir.
We'll do it again next week. It'll be the Christmas Eve edition of the NFL tier rankings next week. By the way, next week, regular schedule for us outside of Wednesday. Same thing for the following week. We're off on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. We have all kinds of special programming for you here on the Team 980. When we get back, speaking of special, real things, real people said into real microphones. Hoffman Show wrapping up here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Tomorrow on the show, it is Wednesday tomorrow, right? Today's Tuesday, Anthony? Tomorrow
Wednesday is actually the day after Tuesday, correct? So it's the day before Thursday, which is Wednesday.
Man, you went so far on that one that you tripped over your own joke.
I did indeed.
Yeah, good job. Good job out of you. Excellent work. A+, no notes. Well, tomorrow, which famously is Wednesday, you'll hear from Dan Quinn. You'll hear from Jaden Daniels, and we'll see what else you hear from. I might pull something crazy tomorrow. I might have to pull a big guest tomorrow. Anthony, I'm gonna tell you on the intercom system, and for those people, I guess if you turn your mic on, people can hear your reaction. But people watching on YouTube can see your reaction. Here's who I'm thinking of tomorrow.
Okay.
You like how I did the offensive coordinator cover my mouth so people couldn't lip read?
That's all you need?
Yeah. So I think we might have tomorrow on the show.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Imagine if we did a whole show like that. Just people can't lip read us the entire show.
You guys want to know who Craig said?
Yeah. So I might have him or her tomorrow.
That's smooth. That'll be exciting.
We've been texting about some stuff, and I'm like, you know what? You want to just have these conversations on the radio?
Yes, sir.
So I might text said person, see what they're up to at 5:00 tomorrow. Other than that, a Wednesday means, what do we do on Wednesdays? Pick 6 returns because we'll have big things to talk about. I forgot, what else do we do on Wednesdays? Oh, it's a short show tomorrow. That's the other thing. Tomorrow we're only on until 6:15.
Yep.
So we got a lot of stuff we're gonna have to cram in. What do we normally do at 5:30 on Wednesdays? Why can't I remember anything? Why am I losing my mind?
We have competition Wednesday.
Oh, that's what's at 5:30 on Wednesdays. That wasn't a bit. That wasn't me trying to troll you. That was me actually.
You sure?
Forgetting. Yeah, no, I
know
realized,
how you get, man.
I know. This is how I get. I'm excited because didn't I pick Washington
in that game?
I think I picked Washington in the Commanders game. So
if you did, that means
you have a shot because that means I didn't go 3-0 for the first time in 3 weeks.
Ooh, interesting.
So,
but I also think I picked the Colts to cover, and they got much stumped.
All right, so I guess it's coming down to 2 other games and maybe a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So I think that's incentive to tune in tomorrow at 5:30. Anthony's now not going to sleep well tonight. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for tomorrow.
I might not, Craig.
And again, we've already established that the loser. Well, I guess we have 2 choices because we have will we have one more competition? No, we will. Okay, the loser this week has to wear the Rooster Christmas sweater, which Chris has left out there, or at least it was. Yeah, it's out there in the bullpen.
Yep.
Next week, the loser is going to have to eat some kind of hot, spicy food at a tailgate when Anthony and I join some of you tailgating before Sunday Night Football.
I'm excited, man.
So hopefully we keep our promises and I actually remember all that. Okay, I know there was something really good for real things. I don't remember what it is, but I'm going to hit the button because we're running out of time, and then I'm going to remember.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, I had to make myself forget, actually, because otherwise I probably could have talked about this for the entire show. Recently, Bo Jackson confirmed one of the craziest things that I've ever heard an athlete do. There is football speed, there is track speed, and turns out Bo Jackson had track speed.
I was on my way to track practice, and they had to come by there. There had to be 20 to 30 guys there, and we were inside running, and the coach came and said, "Hey, Bo, we got a bunch of scouts here from all over the country, and we got a little combine here. They're timing guys for the 40. Why don't you come in and run a 40 for them?" Do I have to? I ran my first 40. And about 5 yards from the finish line, I kind of like let up and just cruised through. And I ran a 4.3. And I got down there. So my coach, as I'm walking back, my coach is walking toward me. He said, "Hey, why don't you run the damn 40? Give these people what they want so they can. So I said, all right. So I said, you got to open the back door because they only had about 10 to 15 yards of space for you to stop once you cross the line. I said, you got to open the back door because I can't stop in this distance if you want me to do it. So they raised the back door up open. And I told the guy that I was with, I said, get my bag and just go on and start walking because I'm not going to stop and I'm not coming back. I'm just going to
keep on going.
Dropping the mic. Yeah. So I got down and everything was done electronically. And I didn't find out till after practice, after track practice, what I had run. And some of the guys that had stopwatches, they had me at a 3.9 or 4 flat with stopwatches, but the electronic timer had got me at a 4.13.
Bo freaking Jackson.